whispering room. The old hospital had been abandoned for over 2 decades. Its once sterile white walls were now covered in cracks, mold, and the remnants of graffiti left by intruders. The locals in town warned against entering, whispering about the strange occurrences reported by those who dared to step inside. Some claimed to have heard footsteps echoing through the halls when no one was there. Others spoke of seeing shadows shift and stretch unnaturally along the walls. But for Ethan and his 3 friends, the allure of the unknown was too tempting to resist. They wanted proof that the stories were real. Armed with flashlights, a camera, and a digital recorder, they pushed open the rusted doors. A thick, musty air greeted them, making their stomachs turn. The entrance hall was eerily silent except for the faint echo of their own footsteps. Dust danced in the narrow beams of their flashlights as they advanced further into the decaying structure. The walls bore deep scratches, as if something had tried to claw its way out. The air carried a sickly sweet scent of rot, mingled with something metallic. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Daniel, gripping his flashlight tightly. "Relax, man," Ethan smirked. "It's just an empty building." But deep down, he wasn't so sure. The silence felt unnatural, pressing against them like an unseen weight. The building wasn't just abandoned, it felt forgotten. As if time itself had refused to move forward within these walls. They wandered through the corridors, past rusted wheelchairs and shattered medical equipment. Every so often, their flashlights would catch something scurrying away in the darkness. Rats, probably. At least, that's what they told themselves. The air grew colder the deeper they went, their breath visible in the dim beams of light. Then, they found it, the infamous room 303, the one whispered about in hushed voices. It was said that a patient had gone mad in there, screaming about voices no one else could hear before vanishing without a trace. No records, no body, just an empty bed with restraints torn apart like paper. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped drastically. The air felt thick, suffocating. The walls were covered in deep scratches, some of them spelling out words too faded to decipher. The scent of decay and something metallic lingered in the air. The bed in the center of the room remained intact, but the mattress was stained a deep, ominous brown. This doesn't feel right," Olivia whispered, hugging herself against the sudden chill. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. Their flashlights flickered. The camera's screen glitched. A faint whisper echoed through the room, an unintelligible murmur that sent shivers down their spines. "Did you hear that?" Lucas stammered, his breath coming in short gasps. Ethan lifted his camera, scanning the room. In the corner, where the shadows were the thickest, something moved. A figure, barely visible, stood there, watching. Its head twitched unnaturally, its body contorted in ways that defied logic. Then, in a voice that scraped against their ears like nails on a chalkboard, it whispered, "You shouldn't have come." The lights went out. Panic erupted. Olivia screamed, her voice swallowed by the suffocating darkness. Something cold brushed against Ethan's arm, a sensation that burned like dry ice. He turned, flashlight shaking, and saw it, hollow eyes, a gaping maw filled with jagged teeth, and fingers elongated into razor-sharp claws. It lunged. Ethan stumbled back, crashing into a rusted medical cart. The others scrambled toward the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, until they became a deafening chorus of agony. Olivia fell to her knees, clutching her head as if trying to block out the voices. Daniel pounded on the door, his screams drowned out by the eerie cacophony. Then, silence. The door creaked open, revealing an empty hallway. But Ethan was gone. The others bolted from the room, hearts pounding. They didn't stop running until they were outside, gasping for breath under the cold moonlight. They turned back, expecting to see Ethan rushing after them. He never did. A week later, the footage was found inside the hospital, lying in front of room 303's door. The last frame showed Ethan staring into the darkness, his expression frozen in terror. Behind him, the shadow moved. The police searched the hospital thoroughly, but no trace of Ethan was ever found. His disappearance became another urban legend, another warning whispered among those who dared to explore the forgotten places of the world. Some say if you listen closely near room 303, you can still hear his screams, trapped between the walls of a place where time no longer flows. And in the darkest corners of the hospital, something waits, whispering, watching, and hungry for more. But the story didn't end there. 2 months later, Olivia began to hear the whispers in her home. At first, they were faint, barely noticeable, a soft hissing sound at the edge of her hearing. Then they grew louder. At night, she would wake up drenched in sweat, certain that someone was standing at the foot of her bed. The shadows in the corners of her room seemed darker, stretching unnaturally along the walls. One evening, as she washed her face in the bathroom, she looked up at the mirror and gasped. Ethan was there, standing behind her. His eyes were hollow, his mouth stretched open in a silent scream. She spun around, but the room was empty. The only sound was her ragged breathing. Daniel and Lucas experienced similar horrors. Daniel's phone would ring in the dead of night, but when he answered, there was only static, and beneath it, the faint sound of someone whispering his name. Lucas saw reflections of figures moving in the glass of his windows, but when he turned around, no one was there. It was as if room 303 had followed them. Desperate for answers, they returned to the hospital, hoping to find some way to stop whatever had attached itself to them. But when they arrived, the building was different. The walls were pristine, the air sterile, as if it had never been abandoned. The whispers were gone, replaced by an eerie silence. Then they saw Ethan. He stood at the end of the hallway, his face pale, his lips curled into an unnatural grin. His eyes were black pits, devoid of life. As they stared in horror, he raised one hand and pointed at them. The walls around them began to shake, the whispers returning, louder than before. The shadows stretched, consuming the light. A chorus of voices screamed their names. The door to room 303 opened, and the darkness swallowed them whole. No one ever saw Olivia, Daniel, or Lucas again. Their homes were left untouched, their phones ringing with static. The town whispered of their fate, of the curse that lingered in the old hospital. Those who ventured near claimed to see figures watching from the windows, their mouths moving in silent whispers. Room 303 remained, waiting for its next visitors, its hunger never satisfied.